Finally, today we want to take a look at what we call the party organization. We're going to go behind the scenes of political parties and see how just the organization of people operates. So, like in the background, what you see here, I know he's blocking it a little bit, but this says Republican National Committee, which is a group of people who are just working to lead the party. This is a person you probably don't know. His name is Rance Priebus. He was the leader of the Republican Party. So, like, doesn't matter that like he was not a president or a congressman or anything like that. His day-to-day job was making the party work, and that's what we want to focus on now. So let's review the components of the party here. We've got three groups of people that make up the party. We've got the party organization. This is who we're going to talk about today. The people who like are employed by the party. Their job is to run the political party. The party in the electorate, that's you. That's the people who support the party by voting for the party, maybe funding, donating to campaigns and things like that, but they support the party. And then the last one is the party in government, which those are the people who represent the party in the offices that they hold in the government. So they like ran in an election and they won. They ran as a Democrat or a Republican and they won, and now they are a party representative in the government. So party organization, the party in the electorate and the party in the government, that's the whole political party. We want to focus on how the party is run day to day. We've got three levels of political party here, just like everything else. We've got a national, state, and local level here. The national party, their job is to organize the party at the national level. So, like, they run presidential campaigns and things like that. They try to coordinate, make sure that the state parties work together. They might, try to get like a fundraiser in one state to help the party be competitive in an election in another state. So they have a big national organization. The state parties, those parties are run in each individual state, and they prepare the parties for statewide elections. But they have to adjust to the voters in their state. So, like the Democratic Party of Tennessee or Mississippi probably has very different beliefs than the Democratic Party in like Oregon and Washington. So they adjust to the local needs. And then the same is true of the local level party. Like these operate at the county or the city level, and they have to adapt to the local needs there. So similarly, the Democrats in Memphis are very, very different than the Democrats in Knoxville, Tennessee. Like they have completely different different ideas about what the right policies ought to be, because they each have to adapt to what's the best way to win the elections where they are. The National Party organization has a lot of jobs that they have to do all the time. So they're going to have to like organize the party between the conventions. The conventions happen every 4 years for the presidential election, and they've got to like run the party every day between then. They organize the national convention. So that includes, like picking a city and choosing the speakers and all that kind of stuff. They make the party platform. The party platform we'll talk about. This is basically the list of policy stances that party says they will adopt if they win. So they basically make a list of these are all the things we would like to try to do. They have to organize the state primaries in the election season. So they'll have to, get a calendar for which states get to go when. And then they have to like coordinate national communication strategy. So they have to make sure that like, Democrats are not fighting. They don't look like they're fighting with each other. So that may include that they have to like, get Democrats in the West Coast on the same page with Democrats in the Midwest and things like that. The Democratic National Committee is actually, this is the party organization for the Democratic Party. So they promote Democratic candidate campaigns. They campaign. They do strategy for all of the different campaigns. They help with policy goals and all this. This is made up from people. This is made up of people from each state Democratic Party. So like all the states pick a couple of people to join the national committee, and they come together and make compromises and stuff like that. A person you probably have never heard of is Jamie Harrison, and that's the current leader of what we call the DNC, the Democratic National Committee. So they actually run the political party, but like we've talked about a lot in real life, most people are going to say Joe Biden is the leader of the party. So Jamie Harrison actually leads the Democratic Party, but that's a person you'll probably not hear a lot about because they operate so much behind the scenes. The DNC has a lot of jobs to do. Like they have to create the rules that their states are that their campaigns are going to use for primaries and caucuses in the different states. They have to decide like when the debates will occur. So like think about the last election. There were 22 Democrats that were trying to be the nominee for president. So they've got to figure out how are we going to do that. You're not going to put 22 people on stage. So they grouped them into two sets of 11, and they make those kind of decisions. They also have to do a lot of fundraising. So for election season, they have to get ready for fundraising, and they're going to do their fundraising in like the wealthiest states. We talked about this already, but like they'll do a lot of fundraising in like California and New York and Illinois, and they'll end up spending that money in places where they might struggle to raise money, like in West Virginia or maybe competitive races in Louisiana and things like that. So they raise the money in one place and they spend it where it's going to help the most. The Republican National Committee is just the organization that runs the Republican Party. They call themselves the GOP for the Grand Old Party. So when you see the term GOP, we're talking about the Republican Party here. They do the same stuff as the Democrats. They have to promote, the campaign activities of Republicans. They do fundraising. They coordinate campaigns and all this. They supervise the Republican National Convention. And so they do a lot, like all the same jobs. It's the same day-to-day stuff. The person in charge of the Republican Party is Ronna Romney McDaniel. So she's been the party leader for a while, and you probably have never heard of her. And that's just like we had talked about before. She does her work behind the scenes mostly. She makes the party operate smoothly from day to day. So if we haven't heard of her, that's the way it's meant to. That's the way it's supposed to be. The RNC does the same stuff. They set up the rules for caucuses and primaries. We'll talk about this when we get into campaigns, but they have different rules than the Democrats do. They give away their delegates differently. And so like they make the rules for this kind of stuff. They decide the same stuff about debates, how many debates will occur and all that. People ran against President Trump in 2020 for the nomination, but like they chose not to have like debates for him to go against other Republicans and stuff like that. So they can make those choices, and they have to do the same thing. They have to work to raise money. They have to raise the money in the places where the wealthy people are, and they decide to spend that money in the elections where it will count. All right, we want to spend a few minutes focusing on state and local party organizations. So we'll look at outside of the national party organization here. This is just an example. I picked a random Republican party, county Republican party here. You see they paint Ronald Reagan on the side of the building, and we'll talk about how the counties and the states are run. And the main thing for you to remember is that they make their own decisions to adapt to the people that they deal with. The state party organizations are just like a mini version of the national party organization, but only for the state level. So they organize the state level elections for their candidates and help run their campaigns. But they have other important jobs, so they have to decide who the electoral college delegates will be for their states. They've got to make sure they choose people that are loyal and will like vote for the party when they get there. They make decisions about whether their state's going to hold a primary or if it's going to use a caucus, and they make decisions about when they want their state's primary or caucus to be held. State party organizations also, like, their job is just like the national one, but they have to win elections in their state. So they've got to adapt to the people that are in their state. It's important to remember the state parties are not controlled by the national party, even on policy. So, like, if the national party adopts a policy stance that's not going to be popular in a state, the state is going to change their policy stance so that they can get more votes. We'll see with state parties, we'll see Democrats in some states that are way more conservative than in other states, and we're going to see Republicans in some states that are way more liberal in other states. The Democrats are going to have to adapt to the places they're trying to win, and the Republicans are going to have to adapt to the places they're trying to win. These state parties are going to send representatives to the national party. So like they're going to get to like voice their opinions and stuff, but it's important to remember that the national parties are just a like very loose grouping of all the different state parties. So the states do what's best for that particular state. So they're going to do whatever it takes to win in that state, even if they're going against something that the national party does. On the local level, we're talking about like counties or cities. So, like counties and cities will have their own Democratic or Republican parties, and they just help people get ready for local elections. They're gonna have a lot more to do to like get people organized because they are on a local level. They like know, when are the events in this community? When can we connect with voters and stuff like that? So they're much closer to the people than the state party or the national party. But they have to do a lot of the same stuff. They have to do fundraising and advertising, and they have a much more important role in finding the candidates. They have to find people that they think can be competitive in elections. City level parties way back is where we found what we call party machines. These were just big party organizations, of leaders that just kind of facilitated, other people moving into the government, and performing the jobs of government and stuff like that. So they basically they got power in a city, and they stayed in power by giving away important city jobs in return for loyalty. This is what we call patronage. A person would become mayor of the city or whatever, and he'd want to make sure that he could keep winning elections and all this. We'd call this person the party boss. And they would give away the good jobs in the city, to people that were potential rivals, or people that were important leaders of different groups in town, and that would be a like reward for their loyalty, and that would make sure that people remained loyal to that person and kept them in power for a long time. So party machines came out of these city level, party organizations, and these were a really bad thing because they basically made elections in cities non-competitive. City parties will also usually make a decision to have what's called nonpartisan elections. So this solves the problem like in a lot of cities. Think about Memphis. Like the overwhelming majority of people in Memphis are Democrats. Like Democratic candidates in national elections in Memphis only will get about 85% of the vote. So like if you're going to have a mayor election in Memphis that's a Democrat versus a Republican, it's not going to be close. So the state level parties may decide instead to have what's called a nonpartisan election. And so here, the individuals, are not representative of the party. They just run as individuals. And so they're all basically running as independent, probably because like the voters are really choosing between three or four options that are all leaning Democrat. So this happens a lot in cities where the cities, like their big races like mayor or something like that, might not, have party labels on those elections. In Memphis, we have a nonpartisan election for mayor, but in Shelby County, where there is a more even split between Democrats and Republicans, a Democrat runs against a Republican for that election. So this is the kind of decision that gets made on the local level. The last thing we want to talk about with national with party organizations here is national conventions, which this is really their big thing that they do. This is their big show that they put on every 4 years here. You can see it involves a whole lot of balloons. You should just Google image search national party convention, and it is nothing but balloons falling on people here. So they've got to put on a big pep rally for their candidate for the presidential election. These national conventions, are officially nominating conventions. This is the place where the person is officially named the nominee of the party. But before the 1970s, this is actually where the nominee was decided on. So the delegates would be elected from all these different places, and they would literally go and make a decision about who the candidate would become. Now it really is just like I described it as a pep rally. That really is what it is. It's just like a TV show, that the media covers. It's like a week of free attention for the candidate running for office. All the networks are going to cover it, and the nominee is going to get a lot of attention here. In nominating conventions today, like the delegates have all already been decided on based on the results of primaries and caucuses in the different states. The nominee has probably been like clear to everybody for months by the time we have the convention. For example, the national convention in 2020, the convention was in August, but like Joe Biden was officially, like everyone knew Joe Biden was the nominee by early March. So this is just like really a big event to get attention. The one like official thing they do is they decide on the party platform. So they make decisions and they vote on what the party's stances will be. And party members from all around the country like have to debate and agree on a certain like list of issues that they're going to to say that their party will put into effect. So at the party's big nominating convention, they're going to like settle on the platform, and they're going to announce the platform for voters. They're going to officially say this person is the nominee, and that's the big, that's when we drop the balloons and we get all excited. Another big event is what we call the keynote address. This is a really high profile speech where someone comes and really talks about the party's values. They always go one of two ways here. They either go with like an old party hero, like an old president or something, somebody who had been a big person in the party for a long time, or they'll go with like an up and coming young person who they think is really exciting. So like Barack Obama gave the keynote address at the Democratic convention in 2004, and it was like, here's a young person who's so exciting and will get people fired up. And so Barack Obama really like came on, got a lot of national attention. Barack Obama was also the keynote speaker here in 2020. So now he's like the old party hero. He's been president, and he's like an old person that we look to for advice in the party and all that. So that's how the keynote address goes. And then there's also speeches like that come from the candidate's spouse, the running mate, and finally the last night is the candidate themselves. That's when they're named the party's nominee officially. All right, we finally made it for our bigly ideas. So we finally made it to the end of a long set of things to learn about with party organizations here. This is, of course, here's President Trump hanging out with our favorite one-party state leader, Xi Jinping of China. So it looks like they're having a great time hanging out here. And here's President Trump at another party. So very, look at him in his tux over there, having a big time with Prince Charles here. Here's what we want to make sure we can remember after all the stuff today. We want to make sure we can explain the reasons why the United States is stuck in a two-party system. What is it that got us in a two-party system, and why is it so hard to change? We want to make sure we can describe the good parts of a two-party system and the bad parts of a two-party system. We also need to, even though it's not the United States, we need to think about what a multi-party system would be like and what a one-party system would be like. And then finally, we've got to be able to describe the party organizations in the United States. So the main thing there is we need to think of all the things that the national party does, from the national conventions to the fundraising to the campaign decisions and all that. But we have to remember that the state party organizations are separate, and they have the freedom and the flexibility to adapt to their own voters. All right, so we got a lot of stuff to get through there. We were dealing with multi-party systems and one-party systems. We're taking a big look at our two-party system and looking at the party organizations. Moving forward, we're going to focus on the history of our two political parties. We're going to find out how the Republican and Democratic parties got to where they are today. And then finally, we're going to spend some time to take a look at those little bitty third parties that have no chance of winning, but those adorable little guys, they just keep running for office anyway.